All right, Emily, the clock's right down there. You have 4 minutes starting now.
Cool. The space gold rush is here. From space tourism to future commercial space stations, more and more people are visiting space. But space is dangerous. Accidents like depressurizations can and will happen. And the equipment we're using to protect people in vehicles is very outdated. Spacesuits haven't fundamentally changed in over 60 years. And all of the spacesuits and safety technology we have was built for NASA to protect government astronauts. And obviously the needs of government astronauts are much different from those of commercial astronauts and commercial launch providers. Archrift will be the Levi's of space. We're building technology to protect the next generation of astronauts. Commercial astronauts care much more about experience than government astronauts. And with that in mind, we've made our first product, which is an instant emergency space helmet. Our proprietary helmet technology can protect people of any skill level without impeding their experience or their work. The way it works is it stows completely away, and in an emergency, automatically deploys to provide supplemental oxygen and impact resistance. For the past 3 years, we've tested many different methods of deployment, and the one we've currently settled on is a spring-based deployment mechanism, which will work well in an unpredictable and rapidly changing pressure environment. Ship alarms will trigger deployment in an emergency, and the dome will be clear to allow for greater visibility. The helmet can be integrated into a flight suit for suborbital flight, or replace a helmet of an existing IVA suit for orbital flights. We have 5 provisional patents, and we're one of the only companies in the country working on spacesuit technology. Currently, if you want to go to space, there are 2 intra-vehicle safety options: quick-on oxygen masks, which are usually used for suborbital commercial flights, or full IVA suits, which are usually used for orbital and NASA commercial crew flights. Quick-on oxygen masks require passengers to find and put them on in an emergency. Given their limited amount of training and the fact that useful consciousness in a depressurization is only about 5 to 10 seconds, this is a super bad idea. Full IVA suits, on the other hand, are safer, but they're incredibly expensive, uncomfortable, heavy, and their helmets suck. IVA suit helmets don't turn with your head and severely limit your field of view. Since our helmet stows until needed, you have an unobstructed view of everything around you. Since it deploys automatically, it doesn't require any training to use, and it will be less prone to user error. Our beachhead market is suborbital commercial spaceflight. We expect this to grow a lot in the coming years, given all of the space projects in the works that will require humans living and working in space. Using what we've learned in space, we plan on adapting our deployment mechanism for use in high-risk terrestrial jobs, like chemical plants and mines. We chose space as our beachhead because it's an emerging market, so it's easier to enter and we can do the most good there. Also, having a space-proven helmet will help us differentiate us in the industrial safety market. We are constantly building and testing new prototypes, but we plan on doing our final validation testing to go to space next year and go to market in early 2024. If you would like to join us in being part of the future of space, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very good, Emily. Thank you. Mark, let's start with you with the first question.
Yeah, so Emily, well presented, and what an interesting business that you have there. So we're investors in people, so I'm interested in your backstory. What was the catalyst for you creating this business? How did you lead to that point?
Yeah, so I've been interested in space my entire life. I love space. And I was a bit concerned about the safety of commercial launch providers. And obviously we're sending less trained people up. And I was like, hey, this is gonna get dangerous if we don't have technology to protect them. And I was in college at the time. And I was like, hey, I could just build something better instead of just being concerned about it. So I founded this when I was 20 and in undergrad. And we got grant funding while I was still in school. And it's been about 4 years now.
Thank you. Emily?
Yeah, I have a question just about the product and the technology and how it works exactly. So is the helmet, I understand it's like a spring mechanism that sort of deploys if there's, I assume, like a drop in oxygen in a station or a the shuttle. Is the source of the oxygen, is that something that the astronaut would wear, or is it more like centrally located and then they walk around with tethers? I'm just trying to understand how someone wears the full product.
So we're probably going to do tank oxygen attached to it, because we have done a lot of interviews with commercial astronauts, both like people who've been to space and people who are going to space.
Yep.
And the one thing they keep saying is like, it can't be tethered. I want to float around.
Yeah.
So we're probably going to do a tank. We have looked into like chemical oxygen generation, but obviously that's like super exothermic and probably a bad idea. So, cool.
Tess?
Great presentation, Emily.
Thank you.
Help me understand who you're going to sell this to, especially because the existing spacesuits or companies that are sending people to space have already designed their own.
So we're targeting suborbital, like commercial, like space tourism companies, so like Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and that's our beachhead. SpaceX is really the only one who builds their suits in-house. Everyone else contracts for it, and there's like only about 3 companies that will build you suits. So very few actually build in-house, surprisingly, especially for IVA suits.
Yeah.
Mark, do you have another question?
Yeah, absolutely. There's presumably terrestrial market application for this. What is it, and why wouldn't you start there and then develop into space rather than starting with space and moving into other markets after?
Yeah, so there are terrestrial applications. We are starting with space because right now it's like more of a safety risk, and terrestrial markets are very established, and they're very established large competitors, like conglomerates we have to compete against. Whereas space, we can actually grow with that market, and we can get in now. And safety devices are very sticky. So it's kind of like we go into space and kind of plan to long-term grow with that market, and then pivot into industrial safety, and then kind of scale in industrial safety. So then we're kind of planning our company for the next like 50 years. But we can make a lot of money in like industrial safety in the next like 10.
So there are existing companies that are making this kind of capability terrestrially?
No.
There isn't?
I mean, we're replacing an emergency escape respirator, but that still requires you to find and put it on an emergency. So we're just basically automating an emergency escape respirator.
Thank you.
I got a question. I was hoping you can explain where you are in the process of the company. Have you deployed anything yet? Do you have customers?
So we're finishing up our prototyping right now. Kind of where we're at. We've been talking to a lot of people in the industry and kind of just finishing our prototyping.
Great, thank you. Tess, Emily?
Oh, I was gonna just say your vision of being the Levi's of space, I thought was very interesting. I'm curious, safety seems like a smart place to start, but I'm curious, what is the biggest version of this company to you? Like the Levi's of space sounds pretty cool. What other interesting space apparel and whether it be for safety or just performance or function, do you envision going into in the future?
Yeah, so we want to be the main supplier of all space safety. You go to space for any reason, you work in space, we're your supplier. And then also maybe move into consumer and do some fun things in consumer. But we're actually working on some side projects right now, also in space. So making a hydrochromatic suit. So most of the suits right now are white or blue. And if you bail out in the ocean, you can't see them very well. So we're trying to make a suit that changes color into international safety orange if they hit the water, so then we can rescue them more easily. So then you still have that style, but then you also have the safety function. So I think that's kind of our thesis is we want it to be stylish and we want it to be comfortable and look good, but we also want it to be as safe as humanly possible.
Tess, last question.
I was also going to double click on the product roadmap of what's next. Maybe then you had on your last slide the goals you're hoping to achieve in validation and quality testing, I believe. What about from a company perspective?
Yeah.
Team, funding, et cetera?
Where are we planning to go or what?
Where you're hoping to be a year from today if we were standing back here.
We are raising our seed, and right now we have about 2 people on our team, and we're going to build that out hopefully to a lot more. And after we're done with space helmets, we're probably going to move on to other suits and move on to industrial uses because we really want to build out our suit technology. So.
Great, thank you very much, Emily. Give them a round of applause.